Now, we're going to blink twice, and it's going to be August. I can't wait. And with all the quarterbacks we just saw drafted here recently, that means a huge new crop of brand new starting quarterbacks will be upon us in college football. Now, new doesn't necessarily mean young, but regardless of class, it's impossible to replicate the feeling of finally being the guy at the helm. And whether you're a fan of Nico at Tennessee, Dylan at Nebraska, Jackson at Oklahoma, possibly Lenoris at South Carolina, or Orji at Michigan, your fan base must learn to become surfers, as you will inevitably have to ride the wave of the ups and downs of the new QB. Now, very rarely does a brand new starter just plug in right away and keep the same mojo going. Carson Beck at Georgia is one of those rare situations where he was not only ready, but he was also surrounded by Avengers on his team that made it a little bit easier. Now, the question isn't, will there be higher lows with a new gunslinger, but how high can they keep their lowest lows? I'll let that one marinate for a second. Now, the players that will rise to the top of this new class of quarterbacks will be the ones that understand these things. One, hero ball is a dangerous drug. You can't and don't need to try and do it all by yourself. Number two, throwing the ball away or hitting the check down is not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes it's the best thing. Number three, you can lead in different ways, but the most important way is to be yourself. If you're a yeller, if you're quiet, just be yourself, be genuine. Number four, nobody should know whether you're up 21 points or down 21 points. It's how you handle your business. Number five, if you make a mistake, move on. If it's not your fault, know when to push the guy whose fault it was and when to let off the pedal. And six, trust yourself. You're in this position for a reason. Now, those rules don't guarantee success or failure, but it's a good start. And as hard as this is for fans to understand, patients aren't just the people waiting in the waiting room to see the doctor. The biggest hurdle is how well young players adjust to the adjustment. Eventually, the book is out on you. So be an evolving target, not a stagnant one. And lastly, go have fun. You worked hard to get here, and it's a game after all. David Cone, former Michigan quarterback, knows a little bit about that position. My brother, former Western State, Colorado wide receiver Blaine, knows a little bit about everything, and that scares everyone.
Scares me.
David, yeah, I know. David, can you talk about, just first off, the jump at the quarterback position going from high school to college? I mean, you went from, high school to Michigan, which is about as big as a leap as you can take. Just adjusting, knowing, hey, one day I may have to jump in this leadership role where I am the guy that everybody looks to on the team, and just how to handle that.
This is one way I explain the jump to people. In high school, you throw the football when your wide receiver gets open. In college, you have to throw the football before your wide receiver gets open. And not that I played in the NFL, but I watch enough of it to know your wide receiver is never open.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have to throw it to a very particular spot where you think it just gives your guy the best chance to win. So look, I mean, we're going to have Jim Nagy on in a bit, and he broke down a list of the quarterbacks coming out for next year that he's already getting excited about. That class looks like it could be just as deep, and we're coming off a historically deep class. When you talk about the young guys who are going to be starting for the first time, I keep looking at this guy, Nico Iamaleava at Tennessee, 6'6", and he can move. We got to see what he was capable of in the bowl game against Iowa when he threw for 4 touchdowns. One thing I wanted to point out here, and a large part of this, why I'm so excited to watch him, is, Josh Heupel's system at Tennessee, what he's been able to build. I just wanted to break down some numbers here. This is Hendon Hooker's 2 seasons before he left Virginia Tech. He threw for 2,894 yards, 22 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions. That's over 2 seasons. In his 2 seasons that he started under Josh Heupel at Tennessee, he threw for 6,000 yards, 58 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, and that last season where he got injured, he had a 70% completion percentage. Now, I know we talk a lot about how Joe Milton won that starting job initially, and then Joe Milton started this past year after Hendon Hooker got drafted by the Lions. But I think that this Nico Iamaleava kid is going to fit in perfectly with what Josh Heupel wants to do, and it's going to be really exciting to watch.
I mean, he showed flashes too just in the bowl game. His ability to run, he's a long strider. I think he's just going to continue to get better. A guy that I find fascinating, and then Blaine, I want to get to, kind of who you're looking at. We talked about Dylan Raiola yesterday from Nebraska, but Lenoris Sellers at South Carolina. Now, he's still in a quarterback battle. Shane Beamer hasn't named a starter yet, but But this, first off, this is a really big kid. I mean, him and DJ Lagway are both big guys. He played in a couple games last year, played in 3, I believe, got some garbage time. But, we talked about Joe Milton just having a big arm, not being a nuanced thrower. I watched this guy. He won the MVP of the spring game. And I know the spring game, like Shane Beamer said, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be the starter. But he's big. He's got incredible feel as a passer. Intermediate throws, short throws, deep throws. He's got the whole bag. You can see it. He knows when to throw the fastball. He knows when to throw the curveball. Like I said, he's big and he can run. I think him, and I hope South Carolina fans, and I think Shane Beamer is going to end up getting South Carolina where everybody, in that fan base wants. If they can be patient with him, I think he has a chance to be a very, very, very high caliber player. And I like the way that he handles himself out there. It doesn't look too fast for him. He looks like he's prepared to go in there and take the job. And his overall physicality and the way he's able to threaten you from a versatility standpoint, I really like the future for LaNorris Sellers in South Carolina. I think he eventually wins the job this year, if not before the season, a couple games in possibly. But I'm really, really excited to see LaNorris in South Carolina.
I agree. I'm excited to watch South Carolina football this year. It's going to be a big year for Beamer.
Yeah.
Really big year for Beamer. And you look at these quarterbacks, obviously you look at Nico first. From just a height, speed, size, what we saw from him last year. Look at their schedule. It's not great. It's not great, but this kid has star power written into him. And I also like Jackson Arnold. It's going to be a little bit different than Seth Luttrell, new offensive coordinator, but they find a way to pump guys out at Oklahoma at the quarterback position. And this kid's only going to get better. Their skill positions will be good. They lost a couple guys in the draft up front, but they are bringing back some depth.
Deion's a player.
Deion's a player as well. Slowly walking to the SEC if you're Oklahoma. You want to be the first guy in Oklahoma quarterback-wise to go in the SEC, and you could dominate early. Oklahoma's schedule is not great, but it's not too easy either. I think Jackson Arnold, Nico, and Sellers at South Carolina all have pathways to making the playoff.
Well, look, when I look at Oklahoma, you think South Carolina's got a pathway to make it
Not
the
as
playoff?
much as South Carolina, but I do think South Carolina could win 8 to 9 games this year.
Okay, and we'll go over the schedules with Jackson Arnold. That one where I was like, hey, throwing the ball away, throwing the check down is sometimes a good thing. Last year, you could see him. He's got that gunslinger mindset to him. Like, he's out there throwing it. But it's like in high school, you can get away with some of those things, as you mentioned. In college, look, throw the check down, throw the ball away. I know Brent Venables, as a defensive coach, is going to be telling him, hey, listen, nickel and diamond down the field is not a bad way to go through life if that's what they're going to give you, if they're going to play off. To your point about Nico, I think what's fascinating about Tennessee's offense, because every football play, it's a math problem, right, with geometry built in. You're counting guys in the box, how many safeties are deep. But it seems like Tennessee, while it's not the most complex offense, they're doing it at a pace where you're like, oh, simple multiplication? I know that. 6 times 3 is 18. 7 times 3 is 21. But what if I start shooting the questions at you incredibly fast? Like, some people can't keep up with that. It's like 8 times 4, 4 times 6. If I start going fast, some people can't compute it that quick. That's what it seems like Tennessee is doing to me. That's why I think that completion percentage is so high. And at the end of the day, for Nico, it's a run-first offense. Tennessee's is. I think some people have
led in the SEC.
Yeah, like it's a common misconception that Josh Heupel wants to throw the ball 60 times a game, like Lane Kiffin and some of these other coaches. They want to run it.
Tennessee won 9 games, in spite of Joe Milton.
Yeah, I agree with that.
In spite of Joe Milton.
I agree.
Like, with Hendon, they're slated to win 11 games this year. You can if Nico is half what everyone's saying he is, and we've seen a little bit of it last year, they could sneak their way into a playoff.
Yeah, well,
I'm interested to see if Nico puts on weight in the offseason, too.
Yeah.
I think right now he's about 200 pounds. I mean, he is thin, but he's also, talking about his mobility, he's very fast. He's going to be an integral part of that run game. So I'm not sure, what their plan is for his weight over the season or over the offseason. But
well, when you're 6'6", you ought to be able to carry. I mean, heck, you know better than anyone. You're 6'7", you ought to be able to carry weight. I will say this as well. Looking at Tennessee, we talk about the run-first offense. We talk about the ability to play action off of it, reading the numbers in the box. I think Tennessee's added depth to that defense too. That's been kind of the sneakiest part of what Josh Heupel's done, because when you operate at that pace, you have to have bodies on defense. You have to in general, but when you're going to go warp speed, it better be double the depth.
I just wonder if people like Josh Heupel and some other teams look around the country at what's happened the last 3 years, look at Michigan last year and then Georgia the 2 years before, and they're like, man, like, is it really the best to go as fast as we possibly can?
Yeah, look, I feel like there's a middle ground there. Like you can, and look, Tennessee can put the brakes on when they have to. I think that's one of the best parts about Heupel's offense. He can go the speed limit when he wants, but what does he want to do? Speaking of Vin Diesel and Fast and the Furious, he wants to get in the El Torino and tear the roads up. YouTube, what's up? We are this close to 100 trillion subscribers. You could be the 100 trillion. So make sure you hit that subscribe button because we got a special reward for you.